Hello again. We've got our next session, which is called Lockdown Pathways, where we've got a really varied bunch of people who have just started a really nice diversity of pathways into games jobs. I'm going to hand straight over to Ian Goodall, who is going to introduce the panel. Over to you.
Well, they're going to introduce themselves, Rick, I think, is the first thing that I'm going to do. I'm definitely not going to steal people's thunder. So, yeah, lockdown pathways, I think, might be a little bit, well, I think, not so much not the point, but I think it's just pathways in general. I think I've just sat through the first session and picking up from something that Aurora said earlier. We saw in the first session that there were the 3 or 4 completely different stories of how people were trying to get into the industry and a couple that have made it in. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, wow, we're going to be repeating all this over and over again because that's kind of what we're talking about. But then I thought, well, do you know what? So what? I think it's a great thing because there's going to be 4 or 5 or 4 stories that you're going to hear now, which I've seen the bios already, so I know a little bit, but I know they're all very different. And I just think that the more stories like this we can get out there, the more people that we should touch that might see something sort of similar, or they may see someone that appeals to them and they think, well, do you know what? If she can do it, I can do it. And if he can do it, I'm in his situation and we can all do it. So I think it's just hopefully some really inspiring sessions today. So so without further ado, I'll try and talk less and let you be inspired by some of the fantastic young people we've got today. So so let's kick off. We'll just have a little chat with each individual person and ask them to introduce themselves and maybe just talk briefly about their sort of pathway into the games industry, because these are all games industry professionals that are in front of you now. So I'll go from top left. So we'll start with Matthew. He was here first as well, so you can go first, Matthew.
Great. Yeah, hi guys, Matthew. Studied at University of Central Lancashire, or UCLan for short, where I did a master's in games development, and then basically ended up on at D3T near Liverpool. What led me there was basically, I'll talk more about it later, but basically throughout that Swift and their initiatives of Search for Star and Rising Star. So yeah, I'll talk to you later to you guys about that. Amazing initiative. But yeah, that's me.
So we've got a coder in our midst. That's the first person we've got in our team. So I'm just going to move across. So we've got Emily's next on my clock. So you can go next, Emily.
Okie dokie. So I'm Emily Inkpen. I'm a copywriter at Marmalade Game Studio. I applied for the position in like February 2020, and I started in April. So I, started in lockdown. Before that, I was a medical writer and had spent my entire career working in like pharma comms and health tech. And yeah, I applied for the job at Marmalade and they gave me a chance. So skipped industries.
Excellent. Excellent. So I'm gonna come back and deep dive for all of you in a minute in terms of what your job actually is, because I think it's something that we probably have an understanding, all of us in this group, of what our jobs, hopefully what our own jobs are. But I think it's really useful just to put a bit more detail out there for people as to, for example, what Emily does as a copywriter, because it's going to be something that I think will help just to lift the veil a little bit for people that are watching about the games industry. So, Kira, how did you make it in?
Yep. Hi, everyone. My name is Kira. I work at PCube as a community manager. I actually made it here through LinkedIn. A recruiter reached out to me and gave me the job offer and basically was like, this is the rundown of the job, and I went for it. I had no games experience, and my university degree was actually cybersecurity, so I wasn't even in that sort of remit, but I've always wanted to work in games. So yeah, my passion just kind of led me here, and I'm very thankful for it. Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah, I noticed earlier when I was doing my due diligence that it was Will from Amicus, I think, wasn't it, that got you the job?
Yes, we love Will.
That one, we're good old friends and enemies of ours, but he obviously did a good job for you. So excellent.
Oh yeah, he was wonderful. Yeah.
Excellent. Well done, Will. Johnny.
Hi guys, I'm Johnny. I'm a technical designer at Wushu Studios. Yeah, I did game design at university, and then I was on the Transfuser graduate program where I started a company and then spent basically a year applying for jobs and making games until I finally got a job, and that's how I got in.
Excellent. So we've got a very wide sort of range of different routes there, which I know again for those of you that weren't listening earlier, Aurora from Unity was very kind of clear to point out that everybody she speaks to seems to have a different story, and in a way that's kind of I think it's kind of great, but I think I agree with Aurora. It's a little bit of a problem in that we need to try and uniform it down a little bit and give people a bit more sort of a few more ways in that are a bit more structured, rather than perhaps don't know, you guys feels like you've been a bit lucky at times. And I think we've got to try and remove that element of luck and putting it all on you guys and making it hard work to get in. We've got to make it a bit easier. So, but still very inspiring. So I'm going to come back to some of the things that got highlighted because transfusers cropped up. I want to dig into that. Search for a star, clearly something I'm very passionate about. We'll come back to that. But can I just ask, just briefly, can you just give us an overview just of what your kind of job is and what you do at your respective companies? Matthew, starting with you, because you're a programmer, aren't you, at D3T? So can you just give us a couple of lines on what D3T do and also what you do there in your job?
Yeah, so D3T's really interesting. They actually do contract work for other game studios. So they don't make any of their own games. They can do like co-development, specific like consoles, porting, things like that. So what I've been doing for next year, I can't really spill any info on any of the projects, but it's highly confidential. But
and your boss is listening, Matthew. So Phil
is listening, yeah. But it's safe to say I've been working on some next gen consoles, which is really interesting. But yeah, it's mainly programming. Not much else there, fixing bugs, like standard programming game stuff, really. Yeah.
And I think I know the answer to this question because I know D3T quite well, and I know Phil quite well as well. But when you went in there, were you kind of training up and making cups of tea and generally being a dog's body, or were you sort of thrown right in there and helping on the code base?
Pretty much thrown right in. Couldn't make cups of tea because starting in lockdown. But I'm sure I would have been if I didn't start in the office. Luckily, I actually went into the office for the interview and then lockdown started, so I got to experience that. But yeah, basically, they just dive you in and just assign you some bugs, and I think it's the best way to learn, really. And you just sort of look around the code place, pick up what's going on, and then it'll slowly get up to speed. And like a couple of months in, I was just cracking away, fixing bugs.
Get stuck in and fix some stuff. Excellent. And Emily, what on earth does a copywriter do at Marmalade? Tell us a bit about Marmalade as well, because again, I've got some knowledge of Marmalade, but I'm sure there's people out there in the audience that could benefit from a few lines of explanation. Changes a bit as well, Marmalade. It's changed a bit in recent years, hasn't it? So where are they at now?
It's been on a bit of a journey, yeah. So Marmalade is predominantly for mobile games, but also releases across consoles. So we've just done a big Switch release. We did Steam before that. They make mobile games and they're a developer publisher. So generally speaking, it's like mobile board games. So yeah, it's like conversion of board games into digital format, but it's not just a direct lift. They've got like these 3D worlds that they create. You're very much in the board. It's very, very beautifully done. And my role there is predominantly I'm a marketing copywriter. So that means basically any of the adverts that you see, any of the blog posts, any of the articles, any of the press releases, anything that involves words, websites, in-app like words, I'm sort of going through. Sorry?
It's all you. Everything's you. You're the voice.
Words department. So yeah, I mean, it's a classic thing. Companies don't necessarily think that they need words by professionals, but I can tell you with confidence that every company needs words by professionals.
So you mean these fantastically talented coders and people like Matthew that perhaps their strength is not words and written content? Is that that's what you're saying, Emily?
I'm saying nothing.
I'm sure he would agree. I'm sure he would. Kira, tell us a bit about your company and what your job is there.
Yeah, sure. So PCube, we are a publisher. We publish around 20 to 30 games a year, so it's always chaotic for us. And we do a variety of games. We're very involved within the Asia markets. So we do a lot of like fighting games, sort of like BlazBlue, and anime games like Kill la Kill. And my job is basically speaking with the audiences, connecting with all of the people who are in our community, getting to know them, finding the ups and the downs, and communicating that back through to the rest of the company. Yeah, that's pretty much my job. I do so much in a day. It's really chaotic. But if you ever see anyone updating those Twitter accounts, the Facebook accounts, the Instagram, that is my job, to make those things.
So you spend most of your time kind of communicating and chatting away on a variety of channels then, and monitoring and shoving stuff out to get people engaged, all that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's funny because a lot of people will say to me, so you basically just talk on Discord all day, and I'm like, yeah, to an extent, but there's a lot more involved than that. But yeah, that is part of the job.
Can't talk about what you've had for lunch or what you're going to get up to at the weekend. It's got to be a bit more pointed than that, I think.
Yeah, precisely. Yeah, there is a way about you've got to go with these things, but yeah, it's great. It's lovely talking to the community all the time.
No, it's great. It's good that we've got a good mix of jobs. I mean, I think certainly here at Aardvark we focus a lot on the technical side of the industry as well as the publishing side. But it is nice to see that we've got a marketing copywriter, which again I'm sure is not a role that any careers advisor would give any advice to any kid at school who's good at English. Do you know what? You could go and be a copywriter and work in the games industry, but it's difficult for them to have that kind of obviously depth of knowledge. But if we can put these stories out there, hopefully there's someone sat out there today thinking, well, do you know what? I love English and I love writing and I love games. So there is a path. It's just got to go and follow it. Johnny, so tell us a bit more about your company and what you do within it.
Yeah, so I'm at Wushu. We're also like a co-dev studio. We've worked a lot on some IPs, like a really big one that was announced. We were working on Baldur's Gate 3 before it released. And yeah, I started only this January as a technical designer. And as a technical designer, it's kind of a bridge between code and design in some ways. So I do a lot of traditional design things. I write a lot of documents and work with other designers to come up with systems and how things are going to work. But I also specialize specifically in Unreal Engine, and I do a lot of prototyping and a lot of bug fixing and kind of implementing those systems at a base level before handing it off to much more able coders to clean everything I do up and make it work better.
So you're like a pretend coder, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, exactly. I
apologize, but that's
it bridges the gap. It makes so traditionally a designer would kind of come up with these systems and write them up in docs, similar to how we still do, but then they would be handed over to a coder to be implemented. And it's a much more complete system if I can take what I design and implement it at its base level. So there's a visual description of what we want to be working and how things want to feel and stuff like that. It's much quicker as well. No coders are wasting their time kind of testing things out. I can do it myself.
No, it's great. I think I did want to pick up on the technical design. I think I'm glad you've delved into it yourself, because I was going to push you on it, because it's a role which, again, I think is a job title. It probably doesn't mean a great deal to anybody that's not got some industry knowledge. But I think it's something that certainly when we're out speaking to graduates, then when we talk about game design and we talk about design roles, we advise people, if they can, that are studying design, to try and become as technically capable as possible, if they can, to almost try to get good at coding, because these are the kind of designers that I think studios definitely want more of now. So I'm glad you've kind of highlighted from the inside what you do, because I've still not got a clue really what game design is. I think there's such a broad spectrum of what game design can mean to different people, but it's good to get some real experience there. So, right, excellent. So we've got a bit more idea of what you guys do. So we're going to touch on sort of pathways again. Now we're going to get stuck into that. A couple of initiatives have cropped up, so I'll go back to those initially. But then if Emily and Kira have got anything that they think has helped them along the way, then we'll open that up as well. But Matthew, you talked about Search for a Star. So obviously I know plenty about it because it's a competition that we run via Grads in Games. But for those that aren't listening, those that aren't aware, can you give people an idea of what Search for a Star is and how it all came about for you?
Yeah, so there's actually two variants of it. There's Rising Star, which is, well, it's the same thing as Search for a Star, but for people who are only in the, well, not in the final year, basically. So it sort of has a divider between people who start in uni and in uni to the people who are just about to finish. So it levels the playing field. But basically, there's 3 stages to it. Stage 1's the hacker rank test. So they give you like a C++ test, and you get scored on that, and then everyone goes through to the second stage, called the dev project, where you basically just make a game. I think they give you a starting project, and you have to work off that and use the starting project in some way to influence your idea. And then from then, 5 people go through to a final, which is determined based on the tests combined with the dev project score. And then you have an interview with leading industry experts, and probably the most intense interview of your life. Having gone through 2 of them myself. Never again. And well, the in-person one was worse because it was intense in there. But yeah, Search for Star, it's great because it's probably the only chance that you have to display your work in front of industry professionals who then give you feedback on that. So anyone can enter this dev project and submit it, and people from companies across the UK will look at your project and give you feedback on it, which is really good to see.
No, it's good. It's great. It's great to hear it. I'm glowing with pride, I have to say. It's nice to see. So, just on that, I mean, do you think? Obviously, you've held that up as one of the sort of parts of the pathway. But did it have a major influence on you getting in? Do you think that kind of awareness that you were able to get in front of the studios and get that advice? Is that what made the difference? Do you think?
100%. I don't think I'd have my job at D3T if it wasn't for Search for Star. Maybe not even a job at all. Who knows? But yeah, like it was Rising Star which really kickstarted it, because in my third year of uni, I can't remember which year, I ended up getting an internship at Boss Alien through Arthur Swift, who runs Grazing Games, which does the competition. And if it wasn't for me entering that the Rising Star, I don't think I would have got that internship. And then subsequently Search for a Star for D3T, even though I won it after I got the job at D3T, I'd already had the internship and the Rising Star finalist that I could go off.
Good. No, it's great. And the only thing I would say is that the opportunities are put there, but you've got to take them and you've got to put the work in. So just to stress to people that one thing that Matthew's probably not highlighted is that it's hard work. The projects are hard work, and it's on top of your university studies, and it's tough. So the work is yours. So it's you that does the graft. Johnny, you mentioned something as well, which I know is another fantastic initiative. Something that we've worked closely with them over the years at Transfuser. So tell us a bit about Transfuser and setting up your own business. How did it start? What is it, first of all, for people that perhaps don't know?
Yeah, so it's Transfuser is a graduate scheme run by the UK Games Fund, where a team coming out of university can enter and get funding just to, first off, to build a prototype and then showcase. So we showcased at EGX in 2019 in London, and pitched there for further funding to then kind of get that studio or project off the ground. And yeah, so we basically we applied coming out of university in third year. It was another like a thing that's on top of your work in third year. So it was happening while we were finishing off our final projects. And then we had from May until October to kind of, we're building a prototype. We had a pitching event in October up in Scotland, where we met a bunch of industry professionals who basically, we did a big old round table pitching event where we just kept on moving from table to different professionals and pitching our project, and then getting loads of feedback, which was pretty amazing. And then we went to EGX and showcased there for a couple of days and pitched again to the Transfuser Fund to get funds to bring the project off the ground, which we did. And then we finished off our stuff, and we used the money to kind of release our first thing and get something on our portfolio. As a team, we weren't looking to start a company and continue. We wanted to kind of make the jump into other studios individually. So we used it to work together and gain experience in that aspect.
That's good, and it's interesting that you kind of reached that decision, which I think is a very sensible one. I have to say, it's the advice that we give most undergrads when we're out sort of doing our talks, is that setting out to set up an indie studio is a very, very difficult kind of commercially, well, to make it successfully commercial is a very difficult thing to do. We'd never say to people, don't have to go, because it's a great time to do it when you're a fresh graduate. You've got less risks and less things that can sort of be impacted. But it's interesting that you guys were very clever and thought, well, we can use this to create a portfolio piece. And I think that's a very interesting piece of advice for people to sort of sit and listen to, is think about that carefully, because it can be a really good springboard especially if you're planning for that all along. So did the game you've made, did it hit the market? Did it get released in the end?
Yeah, so we did release it. We actually released it initially for charity. We didn't release it. We released it on itch as kind of a free platform. We didn't go for Steam or anything just because of costs, and we're releasing for charity, and it's very difficult to calculate donations when Steam takes 30% off top of all sales, and there's other administrative costs and stuff like that. So yeah, we did that, and then it's still there. It's free, but it's still going.
That's great. I think the one thing about both of those initiatives, I know that I think is key, and probably something for people to take away, is that what you've both done as part of the initiative is you've built a finished game. Matthew, I think you did that as an individual programmer, so it's slightly different. But you've started a game and you've finished a game and you've published a game, and I think it's the same for you, Johnny. You've gone through that whole life cycle, and I think from a careers advice point of view, that's one thing that I think is a really strong takeaway for people, is try and get a finished product sort of out there. There is nothing to stop you doing it, is what I would say to people. You just got to work.
Yeah, and I'll say that in my interviews, especially for Wushu, getting a job, having a game that I've released and worked on was a massive part of actually getting a job. It was one of the first things they said, was that it's really great to see that you've released a game. Like, making games and having them on your portfolio is really good, but the experience of actually releasing a game and getting feedback from people that have paid for something that you've made is different to that, and a massive experience. So I recommend doing it, even if it's not part of Transfuser. Just do it and see what happens, because you'll learn a lot.
No, it's very true. I think, again, if we're out to inspire people and give people some sort of nuggets of advice, then I think it's a very good one. That when we go out and talk to students, the one thing that I say to people is just make games. No, don't just make them, but publish them. Get them out there, get some feedback. And it's when you're sitting there at interview, I think, as Matthew will tell you, the one thing that the panelists that grilled him will say is, well, if you've not released a game, then why not? Because they look back now, some of these guys that have been in games for maybe 20 years plus, they didn't have that opportunity when they were your age, or when they were sort of graduates. The platforms weren't as accessible, the stores weren't available. So they look at it now and think, wow, you guys have got that opportunity. And if you don't take it, then it's almost looked upon not favorably, I suppose. So that's why it's received so well. So very good. Kira and Emily, I mean, I feel like I'm leaving you out on this one. So I don't know, were there any sort of initiatives, not so much these formal ones that exist, but is there anything else that you used, or anything that you came across that helped you guys get in, that you'd like to highlight? If not, matter, you've got different routes. These are different routes, aren't they, for different people? So I just wanted to make sure that we weren't leaving you out.
Emily, you can go first.
I'm gonna say no.
No, that's fine.
It was other things, but not a specific program. But
we'll get into the things that inspired you next then, so that's fine. I think it does make me sort of realize, though, that if we did have kind of vehicles like this that were available for the different pathways, then certainly it would help. I think these formal pathways certainly have opened up the opportunities for Matthew and Johnny. So right, so let's have a look. We've got some questions that we're going to run through. One thing that cropped up, actually, I've got a Q&A question which came in for Johnny. And the question is, would you recommend doing Transfuser part-time, even if you have a summer internship lined up?
I guess it depends on what you want to get out of transfuser. I know they've updated the way that it works now, so there's a couple of different pathways. When I did it, there was only one pathway as a team to set up a company and do a project. To do that is a lot of work. It was full time for a year. And I had a part-time job for half of that, and then I had to leave my part-time job to actually finish it off. So it was really intense. So I wouldn't suggest doing that. I mean, you could probably do it. I don't know if you'd be able to get everything you want out of it, but I think there's a couple of different pathways now in transfuser that I don't know enough about, that you could maybe do part-time alongside a summer internship.
So
but
maybe,
I think a summer internship you kind of get similar things out of as well. You know, they're similar.
I suppose there's a danger there in them that if they do, maybe if you do both, you kind of dilute the benefits of both of them, rather than perhaps focusing on either doing the internship or doing transfuser. But I would agree. I think if you can get one or the other, then they have both got fantastic benefits. So maybe just be careful with the check into how many hours that you're going to need to get something from it. So hopefully that answers that question. So right, we're gonna move on to some different questions now, slightly different but similar. We'll go around the board. We're gonna start with Kira this time, so we'll mix it up. What's the best piece of advice you think that you were given kind of along the way that helped you get into the industry? I know you kind of sounds like you were kind of approached and almost dragged in by Will from. But were you given any help along the way that you can remember that could be useful for people out there?
Yeah, actually, when I was initially looking into working in games, obviously this can't really be done right now because of the pandemic, but I went to certain studios and I asked for tours around their studios. I just said, can I start talking to the people? Can I get to know what they do? And that for me was such a big help, because I got so much help from the people within that game studio. For me, it was actually Jagex.
Right.
I spoke to the community manager there, and I spoke to the social media guy there, and they both said, you know, anytime we will help you with your CV. And because I had that connection with them, they were so open to helping me. They were like, we will do anything we can to like help you get into the industry. People are so helpful. So I think people don't use that enough. For me, LinkedIn was the main platform, as well as Twitter. Social media, you can just reach out to anyone. It's so open. So yeah, for me, that was the main thing.
Did you do quite a lot of kind of social media networking even before the interview process for yourself starting? You'd kind of built up your own, in a way, your own network of games people that you were speaking to, shall we say, on a regular basis?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it was a lot of people that were working in social media, because for me, I actually worked in social media before I was in games, just in a completely different industry.
Yeah.
And I just reached out to them and I was like, you know, how did you get into games? Like, what was it that made you want to do it? And just having that normal conversation with them, they really appreciate it as well. So yeah, that was the main thing for me, just networking.
It's good advice. I think there's a line there that turns into sort of stalking and annoying people.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
You've got to be careful with that, and we're always keen to sort of say to people, look, try and approach people and make connections, take an interest in the games that they're making, the sort of technology that they're using. But again, remember that they're not there to be stalked, I suppose.
No, of course not. Yeah, they're busy people as well, so that's one thing you also have to take into account. They may not reply to you. That's fine. Like.
Emily, what about you? What were you given any nuggets of advice that helped you get to that helped you get in or get where you've got to?
Well, like you say, I mean, when you're doing English and you're doing language, there's nothing really. Like, the only things that I was told I could do was probably teaching or, you know, doing more academia. And so the fact that I got into copywriting, I mean, the best advice that I got really was probably just take the opportunities that you can get, because copywriting opportunities are not that common, and work hard and get what you need out of each one. So it's like, even if you're not in the industry that you need to be in, copywriting is one of those things. You learn the skills and you apply the skills, and you can do that anywhere. And it's just getting used to using words. And then once you've got that experience, no matter where it was, you can apply that. And having the experience is everything. And sort of just seeing it as like, you're on your way, even if you're not in the gaming industry, you're on your way to being there. And that's why I had like a few jobs in medical, nobody saw it coming that I would make the jump from pharma communications to the gaming industry. I mean, I'm still kind of amazed that I managed to pull that off. I don't think anyone had ever left our company to go into gaming before. But yeah, I'm still pinching myself. But yeah, I mean, the fact is what I learned doing that job is what I've been able to apply to the gaming industry. It's all about tone. It's all about language mechanics. It's all about communication. It's that.
Yeah, no, it's all, I suppose it's the same job but different audience, I suppose, isn't it? So you've just got to adapt it for that audience. No, good. Boys, Matthew, Johnny, any sort of nuggets of advice? I know we've talked about the initiatives and stuff, but any separate things to that you were told that you kind of remember and think, yeah, I'm glad I listened to that? What?
I can't really think of anything except for the initiative, to be honest. I've got to just mention the initiative again when Albert Swift basically came to UConn and, well, go around literally every single university in the UK and basically threaten you and go, enter, search for a star or else, basically.
Yeah, I'm quite
best advice I've got.
Quite pleased with that comment, but at the same time, just to be clear, we don't threaten anybody. But I do, we do say to people, it's the best piece of advice we can give is institution. But yeah, thanks for the advert, Matthew. You're doing a great job. Johnny?
I guess it's just a continuation of before. It's just, especially if you want to be a designer in games, you just have to make games. That will open up pathways towards where you want to go. So yeah, just start now. If you haven't started making games, just start making games now.
Brilliant. I love the simplicity of the advice, Johnny, but it is absolutely spot on. If there's any prospective designers out there. Sorry, Emily, go on.
No, I just thought of something else, and like sort of building on sort of jumping on opportunities and stuff, is that I was in pharma and I applied for the job in the gaming industry. And I think that's a big thing, is that jumping on opportunities and making the most of opportunities. A lot of people would be in pharma and think, well, that's just not my industry, I'm never going to get it. But the fact is that you have absolutely nothing to lose in applying for these opportunities and just jumping on them. And
so don't be scared, basically. Don't be put off.
Yeah.
And think that they have is it the imposter complex? I can't remember. Is it that kind of
imposter syndrome? Yes.
Try not to do yourself a disservice and just give it a good crack. Definitely.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. We've done that one. So something that's I suppose a separate question, or a new question. University-wise, I think you've all studied at university. I think you've gone to different institutions. I forget now. One of you is Open University. Was it yourself, Kira? Was Open?
That's
University?
me. Yes.
So just a quick one on that. I mean, how helpful, or what's the kind of structure like there for helping you get in? Do you think it was, in your honest opinion, do you think they were good? Do you think they were bad? I mean, is there anything we can learn from that, and different people can learn from that?
Honestly, they are helpful. They do have little sort of what's it called, where people from different industries will come and speak to you. They do have opportunities just like that, exactly the same as you'd get at a brick uni. And the one difference is, I think the Open University does kind of separate itself from brick universities in the way that you are a lot more independent. So yeah, in that sense, you are kind of left on your own devices. But they can be helpful, and you do get opportunities as well, but definitely not as much as you would if you was working towards like a games degree at a brick uni. I also only done cybersecurity, as they don't offer a games degree at Open Uni. So yeah, but it's good in terms of coding.
Excellent. And working around the room then, I mean, Matthew, how did you find you were at UCLan, weren't you? An institution I know quite well. So that depends on, I know some of the course leaders there. So were they good at helping you, signpost you towards the right sort of stuff?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We have like 2 specific games lecturers, and since they've been in the games industry themselves, they know what they're looking for, like the companies. So they know that they're looking for C++ and not just like game engine experience. So they teach you a load of C++.
Yeah.
It's like they know what they want. There was also like, they did a module just on applying. So where you write a CV, a cover letter, and then your lecturers interview you and give you feedback, and it was assessed. So they know exactly what they want, and they guide towards getting the job.
Thumbs up for you, Clan. Emily, over to you. Any from you? I know it was a different kind of career path you were looking for. So was there anything given to you in terms of careers advice, apart from go and be a teacher?
From uni, not so much. It was a very academic course. I was like one of 300 English students that graduated in my year, and sort of getting into writing and everything was entirely off my own back and jumping on, as I say, jumping on those opportunities. So yeah, no. Short answer.
With the creative degrees like that, then I think there is that missing bit, isn't there, where they're not very good at telling you how to apply it to the real world. And
No.
when you're coming out at 21, sometimes it's difficult to know where you can apply that, and you just have to, like you say, take your opportunities and work your way up to where you want to get to. So, okay.
Yes.
Johnny, whereabouts were you, and how did that? You were at Falmouth, weren't you? I think.
Yeah, I was down in Falmouth. Yeah, my course was very specifically game development. We had lots of different pathways. So people were doing art, people were doing code, people were doing design, writing and sound. I sound like a broken record, but it basically just gave me the opportunity to work in the team and make things. It didn't specifically like teach me technical skills as a designer. Like it gave you the ideas and it taught you a lot of theory. But it's more just, it depends on where you want that opportunity to work with people to come from. Like you could do it outside of university, but it's more difficult. University put me in the space where I had to work in teams of people that I didn't know, which is quite a good experience when trying to get into an industry where you could possibly be working with hundreds of people on one project, which is very difficult.
Excellent. All right, that's good. Well, so mixed stories there then on the usefulness of universities and preparation for life. But so we're just going to move on now to just again to try and give people an idea of what it's like working in the industry. So we'll start with Emily on this one. I mean, is there anything that's I'm trying to get to grips with what your expectation was of working in games and what the reality is of working in games. So you've all done this, I think, kind of in lockdown. Some of you have maybe been in the studio a bit more than others, but really, I suppose the question is there anything that surprised you? What were you expecting, and what is it like? Give us a positive, and then maybe give me a negative. I don't know, just to balance.
Well, working in pharma, I always found myself as like a square peg in a round hole because I was the only one who had done an English lit degree, and I was in a team of people who had masters in biology and biological sciences. So when I moved to the gaming industry, I was really looking forward to working in a team of purely creative people. It's a creative industry. It's got a completely different focus, and it was absolutely amazing. Still is absolutely amazing. The fact that I'm not the only person in the company that's played Final Fantasy VII Remake, and I would have been hunting around my old company trying to find someone, and I would have come up short. And now it's like there's a whole chat about all the games and game groups people after work are playing. And I think it's just sort of like in the interview, the final question from the CEO and COO was, "How are you weird?" And I was like, what? And they said, how are you weird? Because they were like, if you're normal, you probably won't fit in here.
Did you think, do I tone it down or do I go men at this point? What do I say? Yeah.
It was like, how do I even answer this? Because I could be screwing myself.
It's completely obvious what my next question is going to be then, but how are you weird, Emily? I mean, come on, tell the world.
Oh my God, I think my answer was, well, imagine a normal person. I was like, it's easier to ask, how am I normal? Because that will be a shorter list than it is to ask me, how am I weird?
Good answer. I like it.
That would
definitely give them the impression that you're a little bit different anyway. So I'm sure they were after. So that's good.
After 2 hours of talking to the CEO and COO nonstop, I think they'd got that.
She can talk, she can write, definitely. That's the way. What about you, Matthew? What did you think it was going to be? I obviously went in, you did the internship, I suppose. So that was your first impression. But what did you think it was going to be, and what's it like?
So information given to me on like the first lecture of uni and from other people as well so for example, a CEO at a web development company I did an internship at, they all said that the games industry, like he even told me not to go into the games industry because of low pay, crunch hours, all this stuff. And then after my internship and at D3T, it's completely opposite. Like there's zero crunch like at all. Like it seems to be a thing which games companies are moving away from. I mean, it probably does still exist in some companies and probably indie studios, because indie studios probably have to work a lot harder. But from my experience anyway, the games industry is moving toward like away towards that.
So you had the fear of God put into you that it was an awful environment, and it actually wasn't as bad as you thought it was. So that's good to know, right?
Yeah.
In the 5-minute warning, guys. So just to make you all aware of that. So what about yourself, Kira? What were you hoping for, and has it lived up to your expectations?
Yeah, I'm actually fairly similar to Emily in the sense where I used to work, I was a bit of a nerd. Like I was the only one that kind of was a bit different, and it was just really odd. But going into my job, I've been learning Japanese now for a few years, and there's actually multiple people in my company that can speak Japanese, and I've never experienced that before. And it was so nice to be able to be like, oh my gosh, you're learning Japanese, you can speak Japanese, and we can help each other. So finding people with really similar interests that you cannot find anywhere else is always very common. And for me, I think a bit of a downside is that in my head, I always thought it was going to be like all rainbows and happy all the time. And it is true that it can get busy and it can be stressful. So of course you have to remember that, but it is rewarding.
It's not a youth club. It is a place of work. That's what.
Yeah, precisely. Yeah. So you have to be realistic.
Final thought from you on that one?
I mean, there's a lot of good things. I guess one that's not necessarily a good or a bad thing is that it's really hard. It's really hard work, and I really enjoy it. It's constant like solving puzzles basically constantly.
It's hard work but rewarding by the side.
Yeah, really rewarding, and like Matthew said, like at Wushu as well, we don't crunch at all. It's really like that's an expectation I think everyone has when they're going into the games industry. Everybody talks about it, but yeah, getting in, it's really nice to see. We have a really good like balance.
Yeah, I think the press pick up on the bad stories, don't they? And the good stuff just gets ignored. Right. Final bit of inspiration then for people. We've got a couple of minutes, so I'm going to ask you all to tell me one by one, and we'll start with Kira. Where do you think you're going to be in a few years' time? You've all broken in now. You've got through that kind of difficult ceiling, if you like. You've made it in. Let's inspire people and think from everything you see around you and from what you see in your companies and the industry. Where do you think you'll be in a couple of 3 years' time? Let's when you're in your mid-20s, let's say. What are you going to be achieving?
Well, I kind of want to go alongside my degree. Like I said, I'm in cybersecurity, but I want to do it in games. I want to be able to protect the games industry, kind of like what happened recently with all of the like the hacking stuff. I want to be able to fix that. So I'm hoping I'll be in cybersecurity and doing my thing there. So yeah.
And you think that's possible?
Yeah, I think so.
Good. Johnny, what about you?
I mean, now I've got in, I just kind of want to, just I just want to stay in it. And I'm kind of just learning tons. I just want to keep learning. And also I be able to teach people, some of the stuff that I've learned along the way as well. I think that's the plan, really. I don't have any major ambitions to get.
It's good enough. It's good enough. You get settled and learn some stuff. I think it's a good balanced sort of view of where you're at the moment. So, Emily, anything that you see in the next sort of few years that you think, yeah, I can do that, or I'm gonna go and do this?
Well, now I'm in the industry again. I just want to stay, and I kind of hope that I'm going to still be at Marmalade. I've actually I'm a bit older than other people here. I'm 31, so I graduated a few years ago now. And after jumping around a lot, I want to stay. Now I'm in the industry. I want to stay with Marmalade. They're doing crazy good stuff. There's a lot of exciting stuff on the horizon, and I just, more words, better words, and for their upcoming projects.
Brilliant. Yeah, that's good. Good ambitions. And Matthew, what about yourself? You got anything that you see internally, or anything that you want to achieve internally over the next few years, where you want to get to?
I mean, nothing particular. Just carry on doing what I do. I love programming, and that's what I want to stay in. Might still be at D3T in 3 years. Might be somewhere else, but As long as I'm programming, I'm happy.
Well, your boss is listening, Matthew, so you might want to rethink that last comment. You'll definitely be at D3T.
D3T forever. Never going to leave.
We don't want to get Phil nervous on this bank holiday weekend. Let him think you're there forever. Go on, Emily, you've got a final thing, I think.
Well, I mean, 3 years ago, I didn't think I'd have spent a whole year in my house hiding from a global pandemic. So, in terms of where we want to be in 3 years, maybe out of the house would be a good start. Meeting my colleagues, that would be a great start.
It's a good starting point. Rick has joined us, so I'm sensing our time. Is it over, Rick?
We are out of time, but what a brilliant session. Again, lots of inspirational stories and so many different ways into the sector. I hope all those young people listening, or those who might want to transfer in, as Emily has done so successfully, are inspired and realise from that fantastic discussion there's a place for you. You've got the right commitment, the right passion, and the resilience. I mean, it did strike me how terrifying it must be for a young person to sit down as Matthew did, but also Johnny, and to pitch your stuff to people that you've never met before. But that resilience is really important, and that ability to take feedback is, I think, it's intrinsic to any games job, because you're always working in a team to solve problems. And I think there's this view of games people as being by themselves, just fixing stuff rather than working in a team. So hopefully that message has come through loud and clear. So thank you so much for a brilliant session. Thank you, Ian, and all of our panelists. We're going to have another 10-minute break and then come back at 11:40 to hear some of the mentors and their mentees talk about how they are shepherding into the future of the game sector. See you soon.
Well done, everybody.